Rome, 64 AD, a city of marble and gold, suddenly transformed into a hellscape of suffocating smoke and towering walls of flame. For 2,000 years, one image has defined the ultimate madness of power: an emperor standing on his balcony, plucking a lyre and singing of ancient ruins, while his own people screamed for mercy in the streets below. Today, we peel back the layers of ash and ancient propaganda to uncover the truth that history tried to bury. We are diving deep into the conspiracy that turned a tragic accident into the greatest character assassination the world has ever seen. Before we reveal the true face of the man they called a monster, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Join our community of history seekers as we challenge the myths and rediscover the past, one mystery at a time. Are you ready to see the real Rome? Then let's begin.
Imagine a city that was the center of the world, a magnificent metropolis housing nearly 1 million souls, suddenly transformed into an unquenchable sea of fire. July 18th, 64 AD was a night that would forever be written in the ink of blood and ash for the Roman Empire. Rome, the eternal city, burned ferociously for 6 full days, then briefly subsided before erupting again for another 3 days. Nearly 2/3 of the city was reduced to blackened ruins. Thousands lost their lives, and tens of thousands more lost everything they owned. Yet, amidst the chaos of screaming citizens and collapsing monuments, an image emerged that has endured for over 2,000 years in the collective memory of humanity. The image of a young man, Emperor Nero, standing on a high vantage point, dressed in elaborate stage costumes, plucking his golden lyre and singing with deep passion about the destruction of Troy while his own city was being incinerated. Nero has been depicted as a narcissistic psychopath who enjoyed the suffering of his people for the sake of a mad artistic inspiration. This story is so powerful that the name Nero is now synonymous with a leader who is neglectful and cruel. However, if we dare to step back and examine the ruins of history with a more critical eye, we will find a reality that is far more complex. We will discover that the story of Nero and his lyre might be one of the most successful character assassinations or black propaganda campaigns in human history. The question then arises, if it wasn't Nero who burned Rome, who or what was actually responsible? And why is history so stubborn in making him the sole villain? To unravel this mystery, we must first understand the condition of Rome in the 1st century. Rome at that time was not the city made entirely of marble that we see in the movies. Rome was a jungle of wood and concrete. Its streets were narrow, winding, and flanked by high apartment buildings called insulae. These buildings were mostly constructed with dry wooden frames that were highly flammable. On the ground floors, there were small shops that used open fires for cooking or lighting. The fire first appeared in the shop areas around the Circus Maximus, the giant chariot racing stadium located in the valley between the Palatine and Celian hills. That night, a strong wind blew over Rome, carrying sparks 2 piles of flammable goods like cloth, oil, and grain. Within minutes, a small fire turned into a wall of flame that moved at a terrifying speed through the city's narrow corridors. A historical fact often buried in Mythos Nero's whereabouts when the disaster began. More credible historical records indicate that when the first flames broke out, Nero was not in Rome at all. He was in Antium, a quiet coastal town about 50 kilometers away from the capital. Once the report of the great fire reached his ears, Nero did not sit back and relax. Instead, he immediately galloped back to Rome at full speed. Upon arriving at the burning city, what did Nero do? Did he grab his lyre? No. Historical accounts from Tacitus, a historian who actually disliked Nero, reveal that the emperor immediately plunged into organizing rescue efforts. Nero opened his private palace complexes, including the vast gardens around the Vatican Hill, as emergency shelters for thousands of refugees who no longer had a roof over their heads. Nero also ordered the rapid construction of temporary housing. He brought in massive amounts of food supplies from the port of Ostia and drastically lowered the price of grain to ensure his people did not starve in the midst of the disaster. Nero even personally walked among the ruins without a full guard to monitor the firefighting efforts. These are not the actions of a man who burned his own city for personal pleasure. So, where did the story of Nero's lyre come from? We must look at who wrote that history. The main writers who perpetuated Nero's madness were Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio. It is important to remember that these three men came from the senatorial class, the elite aristocratic group that was Nero's primary political enemy. Since the beginning of his reign, Nero had alienated these senators. Nero preferred to align himself with the common people through arts festivals, sports competitions, and economic policies that benefited the lower class, but burdened the pockets of the wealthy. To the Roman elite, Nero was a shameful emperor. He enjoyed singing on stage and acting in plays, activities that at the time were considered extremely low for a nobleman. Their hatred for Nero was not just about politics. It was about culture and dignity. When the fire occurred, the senators found a golden opportunity to destroy Nero's reputation forever. They spread rumors that the fire was intentional, and the motive was clear. Nero wanted to level Rome so he could rebuild the city according to his own grand artistic taste. The public's suspicion was further exacerbated by what happened after the fire died down. Nero did indeed have an ambitious vision for a new Rome. He implemented strict urban planning rules. Streets had to be widened, buildings could no longer be too high, and wood had to be replaced with fire-resistant stone. However, in the middle of the vast scorched land, Nero built the Domus Aurea, or the Golden House. This was an incredibly vast palace complex, complete with an artificial lake and a 30-meter-tall bronze statue of himself. Building the Golden House on land that had just burned was a fatal diplomatic mistake. It provided fuel for the circulating conspiracy theories. Grieving citizens began to whisper, "Look, he burned our homes just to build his own playground." Nero realized that public anger was beginning to point toward him, and he needed an urgent distraction. This is where another villain in this narrative appears. Nero pointed to a small religious group that was still foreign to Roman society. The Christians. At that time, Christians were viewed with suspicion because they refused to worship the Roman gods and the emperor. By making them scapegoats, Nero carried out brutal persecutions. Many Christians were arrested and executed in the arena. These cruel acts created a new narrative that reinforced the image of Nero, the monster. In the eyes of the Roman people, he was an arsonist. In the eyes of the Christians who later wrote church history, he was the Antichrist. These two currents of hatred met and froze into an indisputable historical fact for centuries. However, if we use modern forensic logic, the cause of the Great Fire was most likely a pure accident. Fires in ancient Rome were not unusual. The city burned almost every year on different scales: dry summer weather, extreme population density, the use of open flames for all needs, and the lack of adequate firefighting technology were the perfect combination for disaster. It didn't take a mad emperor to burn Rome. It only took one oil lamp falling in the wrong warehouse. So, who was the real figure behind this fire? The real figure was urban unpreparedness. But the figure responsible for the madness of Nero we know today is the ancient historians who held personal grudges. They used ink as a weapon to do what they could not do with a sword: erase the honor of a leader. History is often not about what actually happened, but about whose story is most widely read and passed down. Nero is a classic example of how politics, class, hatred, and human tragedy can be twisted into a moral fable that is far from reality. When we imagine Nero playing the lyre on a balcony, we are not actually looking at historical fact. We are looking at the result of the most effective black propaganda campaign in human history. We see how a lie repeated for 2,000 years finally turned into an absolute truth. To this day, archaeologists continue to excavate the ruins of the Golden House, trying to find more definitive answers. But perhaps the answer is not buried in the ground, but in human nature, which always needs a villain to blame for disasters beyond its control. Nero may have indeed been a troubled leader, full of ego and hungry for artistic recognition. However, making him the arsonist of Rome is a historical injustice that we have swallowed whole for dozens of generations. The tragedy of the Great Fire of Rome is not just about the destruction of a city, but about how the truth can also be burned into ash, leaving behind a myth that refuses to be extinguished. History has taught us that often, the most dangerous enemy is not the fire that consumes buildings, but the pen that writes the lies about who held the torch.